it seems to be kind of predictive at this point that there's really a really good chance the Seahawks are going to face a similar situation to last season, where when they're sitting there at the 18th pick, they're having to decide, do we want to go for the value of the defensive player? Do you want to reach for a need of an offensive lineman? Something like that. That seems to be on the surface of it what's facing them down. And there are two players right now that might be at the forefront of those players of collection that sort of stand there, that are basing them on that side of that value standpoint of it, to where they really love the upside of these guys. But these are the two real unique players in this draft, and that are going to be hard to try to, quite figure out where they're going to land, number one. And then number two, to have any kind of certainty as a team that you know what you're really, truly, fully going to get, or that what you're drafting is going to fit to what the player shows you with the physical potential that seems to be there. And the two guys I'm talking about are going to be Shemar Stewart and Nick Emmanwori. These are the two guys that they don't have necessarily the college production that you would fall in saying, well, there's that to make them this kind of star kind of power player, a true blue, no doubt about it, even first round talent. In a lot of ways, I think there's going to be some organizations that look at Shemar Stewart and see it as a late first round guy. There'll be other maybe NFL organizations that see him as a top 15 pick. And with Nick Emmanwori, I think that there's going to be more of a view with him of being more into that 20s first round area to second round area, even after this really great combine. But you're doing a little bit of advanced math with both of these two players. And this is what you sometimes have to do in finding difference makers. It's easy to find those guys that are at the top of the draft, like a Nick Bosa type or a Myles Garrett type, and go, hey, we know we're getting star power here. We're not going to have to train him along. He's going to walk in the door a powerhouse, and let's go. It gets harder when you've got that guy who has those physical gifts, but then you're just not quite sure if he's going to tap into those physical gifts. But the physical gifts are tremendous. Shemar Stewart, to start this out, 6'5", 267, 34 1/8 inch long arms. Very long arms for what he brings at that position. And comes in at 267, which he was listed at 290 pounds out there at Texas A&M. And I do believe that they were playing them at a heavier weight out there, both him and Nick Scorton, which we're going to get to on this a little bit of the lack of production with Shemar that can maybe be a little bit explained with him. But he went out and ran a 4.59 40-yard dash with a 1.58 10-yard split at 267 pounds. That is an incredible 10-yard split for a guy that's got to get all that weight off that line of scrimmage in that first 10 steps. That's tough. 40-inch vertical leap. That's ridiculous. 10-11 broad jump, almost 11-foot broad jump. These are all just ridiculous markers. And to put this in perspective for you, here's the comp between a Shemar Stewart and a Myles Garrett from size, weight, wingspan, vertical, broad jump, college sacks. That's where there's the difference. Garrett comes out, he's got the 32.5 sacks, 4.5 total sacks for Stewart coming out in his college career. But Stewart's got him beat in the broad jump. Stewart's just an inch below him in the vert. Their wingspan, Stewart's got him beat by well over 2 inches in his wingspan. Garrett was about 5 pounds heavier, but Stewart's about an inch taller. Now, Garrett, you had the production. You knew what you're going to get. But this is what teams are going to do with this kind of player, I think, to a little degree. And it's the part that makes it hard for even me on this, where you go, boy, though, if I can put this together, if I can take this physical potential and put it together, can I get to a place of a Garrett-type player with this guy? And that's where I don't think he's going to ever reach a Garrett-type area of things, but he doesn't have to even get to a Garrett-type area of things to be worth the first-round pick for the Seahawks at 18, right? Garrett's, picking top 5. That's where you've got to be in that area of, we need to get a difference maker, blue chip, no doubt about it. I'm not needing to do advanced math. I got this. But if you're at 18, this is where the door opens a little bit more to the advanced math side of this, and to where you can kind of come in sometimes and maybe steal one of those blue chip type players, where you're getting the blue chip player, but you're getting it for a reason. Jackson Smith-Njigba was kind of this kind of player. Jackson Smith-Njigba pretty much didn't play his whole final season in college because of a hamstring injury. Played like 1 or 2 games. So this made a lot of NFL teams nervous at the top of the draft about the hamstring, about the lack of the final year of production, and you got to benefit deeper into that first round, getting a guy who was really a blue chip player in that draft that you landed later on because of the fact that he didn't have that last year of production. Similar kind of story here with the Shemar Stewart. And there is a little bit of an explanation with the production, because both him and Nick Scorton have that lack of production. And I know that there's an explanation to this a little bit, which we'll eventually be doing a little bit of some film study on Shemar, but that these guys were asked to play a very run-heavy system. And in college football, it's not like the pros, where the pros, you watch one defensive line to the other, even 4-3s to 3-4s, and you kind of know what those guys are going to basically do. They're going to, get upfield, they're going to fight, they're going to have some freedom to run some pass rush moves. It's not going to be kind of boxed into what you're asked to do from your responsibility on a snap. And there was a lot of run-first responsibilities with what they were asking these Texas A&M defensive ends to do. It was a lot of, you're going to play play the run first and then become a pass rusher, as opposed to you're going to attack like lightning off the snap and become a pass rusher from the jump, and don't worry about the run, we'll take care of it on the backside. So there was a heavy amount of that built within this defensive line scheme with the Texas A&M Aggies here to have them kind of serve in that sort of role. And so it's a little bit of an explanation for some of the lack of production. Now, it doesn't explain the full gulf of 32.5 sacks to a 4.5 sacks, but again, talking about taking this guy at 18 versus up at the top of the draft. And this is one where I don't envy a guy like John or any other NFL evaluator, because you look at it and go, hey, it's the raw goods is the hard stuff to necessarily find. He's got all that in full. It's flowing over the top of his glass. The cup runneth over. But can we develop this? Can we put this in? Can we get this into the spot? That's going to be the hard part to see with him. It's going to be interesting to see what the Hawks do with Shemar on this. But I think that this is going to prove to be a very much a talent that's going to be very hard, especially for the fact that he can serve that power edge role in this defense first and foremost minimally. That's a bit of the first part of this too, is that you need this so much in your defense right now. That power edge guy, that guy that you just cannot run to his side. He's going to set the edge. He's going to throw tackles around. He's going to be a bully over there. And then hopefully he gives you some pass rush in addition to that. That's where you'd love to get the full meal deal with it. But you need at least that in this defense. You'd love to have two pillars on each side, but you need at least one to the bare minimum strong side of the formation. And he would at least give you that as sort of that floor point. But do you let that overrule you versus some of the other guys that you might have there available at 18 at that point that maybe are a little bit more closer to their assured talent and they're closer to that ceiling spot than he might be? Going to be tough on this one. It's going to be tough, and this combine did not make it any easier for John Schneider or any of the other evaluators in that building as far as trying to come up with what is the right pathway to go. The other guy I want to talk about is Nick Emmanwori, who plays, of course, the safety position. 6'3", 32.5-inch long arms, 220 pounds. He ran a 4.38 40 from the safety position at that size, a 1.49 10-yard split. That is as fast as you're going to see as a time for a 10-yard split, pretty much. You might get a 1.48, 1.49 is about as fast as it gets. And a 10-yard split is so important in football. At times, I think it should almost be held in as high esteem as the 40-yard dash, because so much of the sport is about burst. It is about that 10 yards of space and how quick you can be in that 10 yards of space. Nice to have the speed, but you're much more play in and play out running to that burst, aren't you? 43-inch vertical leap, 11.6 broad jump. My man's just about getting close to flirting with a 12-foot freaking broad jump. And he added 20 reps on the bench press, which is plenty good for him at that size as a safety. Brought it all together as far as his testing goes. Another guy, though, that's going to be just a bit like Shemar Stewart, where the tape isn't bad. Is it sparkling? Is it sizzling? I went back and watched Emmanwori's 22 tape again here with a couple of games and trying to just kind of parse through it a little bit. And the safety position can be hard because there's not always all the opportunities in the world for you to go out there and show out what you can bring to the table. And there are some good plays that he does give you. Do you walk away with this tape saying first round? No, you don't. But do safeties come built like this like ever? No, they don't. Earl Thomas was probably around some of these times. He wasn't jumping 43 inches. He didn't have a broad jump like that. He didn't have the size of this guy. He ran, I think, his 4.37 probably at something like 195 pounds or something like that back 10 years ago. And he was the 12th overall pick. But of course, with Earl, you had the production. You had the picks. You had the ball skills in college. With Emmanwori, you've got some good stuff there. There are some interceptions. There are some moments with him on tape where you're like, wow, the flashes are there, to combine with the talent he showed, with the testing here in this combine, where there is definitely that upside of that player. This isn't you looking at a mirage completely with Stewart or with Emmanwori. I like both of these two guys. It really just is, are we sure about them in the first round, or is it more that these guys should be really held into more of that second round range of things? I think both have done enough at this point to push themselves up into first round contention. There's no doubt about that. I think that when it comes to Emmanwori being talked about in like the top 15, I think that's where we got to tap our brakes a little bit because the production isn't quite up to that kind of snuff in what I saw from him on tape, or necessarily what I think from teams are going to take away from him on tape based on what I'm reading. Shemar might be a little bit more because he plays defensive line. It's a little more of a high-valued position. I do think he's probably going to push his way, at the very least, into top 20 at this point. Now, how high? Beyond that, it's going to get hard. That's where that advanced math stuff makes this a little bit more difficult. But guys don't test like this. People have been saying Cam Chancellor 2.0 with Nick. He's not Cam Chancellor. He can give you some occasional good hits, but he's not going to play as ferociously as Cam. He's not throwing alignment off blocks. He's not coming down in the run game like just an absolute monster. It's all kind of solid. It all gets the job done when you watch on tape. And you do feel the speed and you do feel the athleticism from him on tape though too, especially when he's going into like cover 2 drops where he's got to pick a guy up the seam. and he's seamless with it. He can get picked on a little bit on sort of out-cutting routes and out-cutting, where guys going up and he's trying to stay on top, and then he just gives up too much, space up over the top. But he can do all of the safety stuff that you need to do in our scheme. He can do the split safety stuff. He can play down the box. He can play as a single high safety. He's comfortable in all of those roles. He can do a little bit of the stuff from the slot in addition to that. So he is a fit to this defense on that. It is, though, that if you take a guy like this at 18 in the first round, you're going, oh, we're definitely having to be sure about our ability to develop this guy and get him to reach that ceiling, because he's not walking in the door at that ceiling point. And that's going to not necessarily be the worst thing, but you're going to measure this up against the other guys that you might have to pick there. And that's where it gets hard on that value chart of, well, what's the true value chart? This guy's hit that ceiling. This guy might have a little more ceiling, but he might not be as likely to hit that ceiling. That's where it gets hard in the value chart in the first round of where to go with guys. Not just as, well, this guy's more valuable than this guy on the board. Like, well, there's some advanced stuff we got to do on this one.